She just pushes papers in an office in Germany. Colette doesn't know what real service looks like. That's what my stepmother said into a microphone in front of 60 guests at my father's 65th birthday dinner. I didn't flinch. I placed my water glass down gently, felt the cold condensation slip between my fingers, and folded my hands in my lap. The ice shifted in the glass. The room laughed, not all of them, but enough. My name is Colette Brannigan. I'm 37 years old. And up until 9 seconds ago, I was sitting quietly at table 12, cutting into a filet mignon I hadn't asked for, watching the blue glow of the stage monitors wash across my stepmother's face like a halo she hadn't earned. Now I'm the punchline of a toast I was never meant to survive. They don't know that yet. I learned the hard way that in the Brannigan household, my silence was never seen as strength. It was proof I didn't matter. The night Diane mocked my career from a podium draped in white linen and hydrangeas, something inside me shifted like a bone that never set right. But let me start at the beginning. I flew into Charlotte Douglas International at 6:14 in the morning, 3 days before the gala. The October air hit me the moment I stepped through the terminal doors. Cool, damp, heavy with pine, and the faint chemical sweetness of jet fuel bleeding off the tarmac. North Carolina in autumn smells like someone else's childhood, not mine. Mine smelled like sand and encrypted hardware and the metallic taste of adrenaline at 2 a.m. inside a signals vault at Ramstein. No one was waiting at arrivals, no welcome sign, not even a text from my father, just an email from Diane's assistant with a PDF attachment. Dress code, seating chart, parking instructions. I was at table 12, the table nearest the kitchen, the table farthest from the podium. That was it. No hug, no warmth, no hug. No, just logistics for a daughter who handled logistics for a living. At least that's what they believed. For 15 years, I have served in the United States Air Force, 4 years at the Academy, 11 years active duty, intelligence officer, signals intelligence specialist. My unit at Ramstein, the 451st Intelligence Squadron, handles high-side data that cannot be acknowledged in civilian circles. My work exists in rooms with no windows, behind doors that require codes I will never say out loud, on frequencies that don't officially exist. I have coordinated intercepts that prevented 3 separate attacks on NATO convoys. I have sat in a skiff at 0300 watching red dots converge on a blue dot and knowing that the blue dot was a 19-year-old kid from Ohio who didn't know he was about to die unless my team got the signal right. We got the signal right. But when anyone in my family asks what I do, I say the same thing. Every time I work in analysis, some clients prefer discretion. Denial, I would learn, was their specialty. Diane married my father when I was 27. I was already commissioned, already a second lieutenant in intelligence training at Goodfellow. Already gone. She moved into the house on Lakemont Drive 3 weeks after the wedding and began redecorating everything. The walls, the furniture, the narrative. By the time I came home for my first leave, the photos on the mantle had changed. My Academy commissioning portrait was gone. The frame that held my mother's wedding photo had been replaced with a shot of Diane and Gerald at some charity auction, her teeth white, his arms stiff, both of them performing a happiness that smelled like fresh paint. Family photos lined every surface of that house. Diane at galas, Diane with the mayor, Diane accepting an award from the Chamber of Commerce for her event coordination business, Gerald shaking hands with a state senator at a Brannigan Motors ribbon cutting. Not a single one of me. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd rewritten me, the filing clerk, the daughter who couldn't hack it, the one who gave up and took a safe little desk job overseas because she wasn't tough enough for the real world. That was the version Diane had been selling for a decade. At cocktail parties, at church, at every holiday I missed because I was deployed to a location I couldn't name, doing work I couldn't describe, For reasons that would remain classified long after I was dead, she had crafted this story carefully, and my father's silence was the mortar that held it together. Growing up in the Brannigan household meant earning affection like rent. My mother died when I was 14. Ovarian cancer, fast and final. Gerald didn't grieve so much as reorganize. He sold her car within a month, donated her clothes by Christmas, married Diane 18 months later. I was the intense child, too curious, too quiet, too precise. I spent my teenage years calibrating radio receivers in the garage and reading Jane's Defense Weekly instead of fashion magazines. Gerald didn't understand me. He didn't try. When I told him I was going to the academy, he signed the paperwork without looking up from his desk. Diane arrived and found a blank space where a daughter should have been. She didn't fill it. She paved over it. The country club was called Oakwood. Stone columns, valet parking, a string quartet playing something by Handel in the foyer that no one was listening to. I arrived alone in a rented sedan. Charcoal dress, simple, sleeves to the elbow, low heels. My hair was down, which I almost never allow, because it covers the surgical scar along my left hairline, the scar from Bagram. From the night a mortar round hit 40 meters from the signals annex and a piece of the ceiling frame opened my scalp like a letter. On my collar, the small, matte gray pin, nondescript recessed lightning bolt. Lightning. Most people would dismiss it without a second glance. Most people weren't supposed to notice it. The pin is called the Silent Valor Insignia. It is given to intelligence officers whose contributions are classified and cannot be publicly cited. No ceremony, no citation read aloud, just a pin in a black box handed across a desk in a windowless room by a colonel who said, "You won't be able to explain this to anyone, that's the point." I wore it to my father's birthday because it is the only medal I'm allowed to carry outside a facility, and because some part of me, the part that still remembers being 14, and watching her mother's closet get emptied into garbage bags, wanted someone in that room to see it. No one did. The ballroom was gold and white, 60-place settings, crystal stemware catching the light from a chandelier the size of a small car. The smell of rosemary-crusted steak and roasted root vegetables filled the air like a church of money. I found table 12, near the kitchen door, the chair closest to the service corridor. 3 seats from anyone I recognized. I folded my napkin across my lap and waited. Gerald's table was front and center. Table 1. Diane sat to his right, her champagne flute never quite empty, her laugh sharp enough to cut glass at 50 feet. She wore emerald green, statement earrings, a wrist full of gold. Every guest rotated around her orbit like she'd hung herself in the sky and expected the tides to follow. If you've ever been underestimated by people who don't know the real story, hit that like button and subscribe. The toasts began at 7:45. Gerald's business partner went first, then a college friend, then a local pastor who called Gerald a pillar of this community without irony. Each toast was a small performance. Each one landed on the same themes: Brannigan Motors, generosity, legacy. Then Diane stood. She took the microphone from the stand with the practiced ease of a woman who had coordinated 300 events and considered herself the main attraction at every single one. The stage monitors cast blue light across her face. The room quieted. She smiled, wide, rehearsed. "Gerald, my love, 65 years of a life well lived, a business built from nothing, a reputation this entire town respects." She paused, let the applause wash over her, and of course, a family, your family. She turned, looked directly at me, even the ones who couldn't quite figure out what they wanted to be. Soft laughter, the kind that's polite enough to deny later. "Our Colette," Diane continued, her voice rising, warm, the way a searchlight is warm, "is over in Germany, has been for years. She works for some little contractor. Filing, data entry, That sort of thing. She tilted her head, sympathetic, high practiced. We are very proud of her for finding something stable. Not everyone is built for the fast lane, and that's okay. More laughter. My father looked at his plate. She just pushes papers in an office in Germany. Colette doesn't know what real service looks like. Diane lifted her glass. But she's here tonight, and we love her anyway. The room applauded. 60 guests, crystal clinking. Diane beaming. I didn't flinch. My hand stayed folded in my lap. My voice didn't shake because I didn't use it. I looked at the blue glow of the monitors behind the podium and thought about the blue glow of the monitors inside a SCIF at Ramstein at 0300, the night my intercept caught a coded frequency that led to the extraction of an entire platoon pinned down outside Kunda's. The thing about silence is that it isn't always passive. Sometimes silence is the sharpest answer. Diane returned to her seat. Gerald touched her arm. Proud, grateful, complicit. I took a sip of my water, set it down, adjusted the small gray pin on my collar. At table 9, a man I had never seen in person stopped chewing. His silver hair was cropped military short. His posture was a straight line drawn by God. He wore a dark suit, but it fit him the way suits fit men who are more comfortable in dress blues. His jaw was square. His eyes were the pale blue of someone who had spent decades reading rooms the way I read signals. His gaze found me. Steady. Assessing. It stopped on the pin. It held. His fork lowered to the plate without a sound. His expression tightened, shifting from casual interest to something sharper, something that made my stomach tighten. I turned away before he could ask. Not because I felt threatened, because I knew exactly how fragile that moment was. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the man at table 9 was Brigadier General Harlan Cobb, Assistant Deputy Director for Regional Operations, United States Army, United States. And 6 years ago, in a valley outside Kunduz, his son's platoon was surrounded, pinned, 17 minutes from being overrun. The voice on the frequency that night, the one that broke the intercept, relayed the coordinates and guided the extraction birds through a corridor the enemy didn't know existed, had a call sign. Overwatch Actual. That was me. Tomorrow they would call me something else entirely, but tonight Diane raised her glass one more time and I folded my napkin beside my untouched plate. Not yet. The chandelier above the ballroom trembled, not from wind, not from the bass of the string quartet, which had resumed something delicate and forgettable. It trembled because 60 people were shifting in their chairs, leaning into conversations about what Diane had just said, and the collective vibration of their indifference moved through the floor and up through the crystal. I felt it in my fingertips. The way you feel a frequency before you hear it, the way a signal announces itself in the static before the words form. At table 9, General Cobb had not resumed eating. His fork remained on the plate. His napkin was still in his lap. But his posture had changed. The casual recline of a dinner guest had been replaced by something I recognized. Operational attention, the stillness of a man who has identified a variable and is running calculations. He was looking at me, not at my face, at my collar, at the pin. I knew what was happening. I had seen it before, twice. Once in a briefing room at Langley when a civilian liaison noticed the insignia on a colonel's lapel and went pale. Once at a NATO conference in Brussels when a British intelligence officer spotted the same pin on my jacket and simply nodded. No words, no questions, just recognition. The pin was designed to be invisible to anyone who didn't know what it meant, and to be unmistakable to anyone who did. General Cobb knew what it meant. He leaned toward the man beside him, Gerald's business associate, Tom Harris. Cobb said something low. Harris shrugged. Cobb's eyes returned to me. This time they didn't stop at the pin. They moved to my posture, my hands, the way I held my water glass, the way I hadn't reacted to Diane's toast. He was reading me the way I read intercepts, pattern, anomaly, confirmation. I held my gaze on the centerpiece, white roses, baby's breath, a candle that flickered like it was trying to decide whether to stay lit. Diane, meanwhile, was making rounds. She moved from table to table the way a campaign manager works a fundraiser, touching shoulders, laughing too loudly, accepting compliments for the toast she had just delivered. She stopped at table 9. I could hear her voice from 12 tables away. That was Diane. Volume was her currency. General Cobb, isn't it? Tom told us you'd be joining. We're so honored to have a real military man at the table tonight. She placed her hand on his forearm. Gerald tried to serve, you know. Bad knee kept him out, but he's always supported our troops. Always. Cobb nodded, polite, controlled. And that young woman you may have noticed at table 12, Diane said, and my stomach went cold. That's my stepdaughter, Colette. She's been overseas for a few years now. Germany, some sort of filing position with a government contractor. She lowered her voice to that pitch she used when she wanted sympathy to sound like concern. We worry about her. Honestly, she's so quiet, so withdrawn. I sometimes think the military chewed her up and spit her out, and she just never recovered. You know how it is. She touched the general's arm again. Conspiratorial. Between us, I called the base once Ramstein, just to check in. Mother's instinct. She smiled. They had no record of a Captain Colette Brannigan in their directory, not one. I didn't have the heart to press it. Some people need their stories, you know. She painted a picture of a woman living in delusion, a failed soldier clinging to a fantasy, a filing clerk wearing a pin she hadn't earned. General Cobb said nothing. His jaw tightened. His pale blue eyes moved from Diane's face to mine, back to Diane, back to mine. That pin she's wearing, Diane added, gesturing toward me with her champagne flute. I have no idea where she got it. Probably some military surplus store online. You can buy anything on the internet these days. She laughed. Don't tell her I said that. She moved on. Table 10. More laughter. More volume. General Cobb did not move on. He was still looking at the pin. I adjusted my collar. Not to hide it. To confirm it was still there. The matte gray surface caught no light. The recessed lightning bolt was invisible from more than 3 feet away. That was the design. Silent valor. You carry it knowing no one will see it. You carry it knowing that the people who need to see it will. Cobb reached into his jacket pocket. He removed his phone. He typed something. Short, precise. The kind of message a man sends when he needs confirmation before he acts. He set the phone face down on the tablecloth and waited. 30 seconds later, it buzzed. He read the screen. His expression didn't change, but his breathing did. I saw it from across the room. The slight expansion of his chest, the deliberate exhale, the way a man steadies himself before he steps into something that cannot be undone. He placed his phone back in his pocket. He picked up his napkin, folded it once, set it beside his plate. And then Brigadier General Harlan Cobb stood up. The room didn't notice at first. Conversations continued. Forks scraped plates. Forks. Ice clinked. The string quartet played something that sounded like it was trying to be Bach, but had given up halfway through. He buttoned his jacket. Single button. The motion was automatic. Muscle memory from 30 years of standing at attention before speaking. He stepped away from table 9. His shoes were Oxfords, but they hit the hardwood floor with the weight of a man who had spent more of his life in combat boots than dress shoes. Each step carried authority the way a frequency carries signal. Clean, unmistakable, impossible to ignore. He walked past table 10, past table 11, past the service corridor, past the kitchen door. He stopped at table 12. He didn't look at the empty chairs. He didn't look at the untouched plate. He didn't look at the centerpiece or the water glass or the napkin I had folded beside the fillet I never cut. He looked at me, directly, fully, the way you look at someone whose voice you heard in the worst moment of your life and whose face you have never seen. The room began to quiet, not all at once, in waves, the way silence moves through a crowd when something is happening that no one understands yet. Table 10 went quiet first, then 8, then 6. Conversations trailed off mid-sentence. Forks paused. Glasses were set down. Even the candle flame on my table seemed to hesitate. "Ma'am," General Cobb said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. It was the voice of a man who had commanded battalions. It filled the room the way water fills a vessel, completely, without effort. I apologized for the interruption. He reached up, straightened his tie. It was the smallest gesture, but I recognized it. It was what men do before they salute when they aren't in uniform. "Captain Sable." The name landed in the silence like a stone dropped into still water. I watched the ripple move through the room. Table 6, table 4, table 1. Diane's champagne flute stopped halfway to her lips. Gerald's hand froze on the armrest of his chair. "Ma'am, the 112th owes you a debt we can never repay." General Cobb's voice was steady, measured, the precision of a man delivering a field commendation. "It is an honor to finally see the face behind the frequency." He squared his shoulders, brought his heels together, and in the middle of the Oakwood Country Club ballroom, in front of 60 guests and a chandelier the size of a small car, and a stepmother who had just called me a filing clerk, Brigadier General Harlan Cobb raised his right hand to his brow. Crisp, formal, full. He didn't salute Gerald. He didn't salute Diane. He didn't salute the pastor or the business partner or the string quartet. He saluted me. The room stopped, not quieted. Stopped. Forks frozen midair, mouths open. The string quartet's violinist held her bow an inch above the strings as if the music itself had been classified. At table 1, Diane set her champagne flute down. It hit the tablecloth harder than she intended. The wine inside lurched but didn't spill. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her emerald earrings caught the light as her head turned from the general to me and back again. Gerald's face lost its color in stages. First the cheeks, then the forehead, then the hands, which went from resting to gripping the tablecloth like a man who has just realized the floor is no longer where he thought it was. I looked up at General Cobb. I didn't stand. Not yet. My hands were still folded in my lap. My breathing was even. My voice, when I finally used it, was quiet. "At ease, General." He lowered his hand, but he didn't step back. He pulled out the empty chair beside me and sat down, deliberately, publicly, as if table 12 had just become the most important table in the room. 6 years, he said, low enough that only I could hear. 6 years I've been looking for Overwatch Actual. My son's name is Danny. He was 22 when your intercept broke the ambush corridor outside Kunda's. 22 years old. He's 28 now. 2 daughters, a house in Virginia. He paused. "He's alive because of you." I swallowed. My throat was tight. Not from emotion, from the years, from the weight of carrying a frequency that saved a platoon and never being able to say it out loud. "Operation Echo 7, I said. Coordinates were relayed via the encryption subroutine at 0317. The corridor opened for 11 minutes before the extraction birds cleared the ridge. Cobb's eyes narrowed. Not suspicion. Verification. "What was the call sign of the lead extraction pilot?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Whiskey 7. He nodded. Once, slowly, the way a man confirms something he already knew but needed to hear. It wasn't approval. It was memory. Behind us at table 1, Diane Brannigan leaned forward in her chair. Her hands were flat on the tablecloth. Her rings caught the light. Her face had gone the color of the white roses in the centerpiece, but the directory, she said, not to anyone in particular, to the room, to the air, to whatever version of reality she had built and furnished and decorated over the past decade. I called. They said she didn't exist. Her voice cracked on the last word. General Cobb didn't turn around. He kept his eyes on me. And in the silence that followed, I heard the front entrance of the ballroom open. 2 sets of footsteps, one heavy, one measured, the sound of dress shoes on hardwood with military cadence. Major Scott Miller appeared at the edge of the room. Dress blues, silver oak leaves catching the light from the chandelier. Beside him, his wife Sarah, who stopped 3 steps inside the door and pressed her hand to her mouth. Miller's eyes found mine across 60 place settings and a decade of silence. "Captain Brannigan," his voice carried. "Ma'am, we're here to extract you." General Cobb didn't move from his chair. He didn't need to. The extraction had already begun. Not the kind with helicopters and corridors and 11-minute windows. The kind where the truth walks into a room and sits down and refuses to leave. Major Miller crossed the ballroom floor. His dress blues cut through the gold and white decor like a blade through silk. Every head turned. Every fork went still. Sarah Miller stayed near the entrance, her hand still pressed to her mouth, her eyes wet. She had suspected. She told me once in a kitchen in Kaiserslautern over coffee that neither of us drank, that she could see it in the way I answered the phone. "You don't pick up," she said. "You receive." She was the only civilian who ever came close. Miller stopped beside table 12. He didn't salute. Not yet. He looked at General Cobb. Cobb gave a single nod, the kind of nod that transfers authority without a word. Miller turned to face the room. "My name is Major Scott Miller, United States Air Force. I served as Captain Brannigan's commanding officer at the 451st Intelligence Squadron, Ramstein Air Base." His voice was clean. No performance, no warmth designed to charm, just data. Captain Brannigan has served 15 years in active duty intelligence operations. She holds active non-disclosed SIGINT clearance above the level of anyone in this room, myself included. He paused. Let the sentence settle. She has coordinated signals intercepts across 4 deployments. She has operated under the call sign Overwatch Actual on classification tiers that do not appear in any public directory. When Mrs. Brannigan called Ramstein looking for a Captain Colette Brannigan, the base responded accurately. That name does not exist in any searchable system because it was never supposed to. Diane's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. No sound came out. Her emerald earrings trembled. Gerald's grip on the tablecloth tightened. His knuckles were white. His jaw was working, but his lips produced nothing. He looked like a man trying to swallow a stone. "The pin on Captain Brannigan's collar," Miller continued, "is the Silent Valor insignia. It is not available in any surplus store. It is not available online. It is not available anywhere except a windowless room where it is handed to officers whose contributions to national security cannot be publicly cited. Ever." He looked at Diane. "For the first time. Directly. This woman is a decorated intelligence officer of the United States Air Force. She has served in 4 classified deployments, led SIGINT operations that directly prevented 3 attacks on NATO convoys, and provided the real-time intercept that enabled the extraction of a 17-man platoon outside Kunduz, Afghanistan, including the son of the general sitting beside her." The room was not quiet. The room was empty of sound, as if the air itself had been reclassified. General Cobb reached into his jacket. He produced a slim folder, not thick, not dramatic, the kind of folder that holds exactly enough to end a conversation permanently. He placed it on the table in front of him and opened it. When Mrs. Brannigan made her call to Ramstein, Cobb said, his voice low but carrying the way a bass frequency carries through walls, she didn't just hit a dead end, she triggered a security flag. He looked at the page. Her inquiry was logged, traced, forwarded to counterintelligence. He turned a page. 2 compromised operations. 1 agent extracted under emergency protocol. 1 signals relay station relocated at a cost of $400,000. He looked up, not at Diane, at Gerald. Your wife's phone call didn't just embarrass your daughter, Mr. Brannigan. It put people in danger. The sound that came from Diane was not a word. It was the beginning of a word that collapsed before it formed. She leaned back in her chair as if the air in front of her had turned solid. I didn't mean to, but you did. That was me. 2 words. My first full sentence spoken above a whisper since the toasts began. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The room had been so silent for so long that even breathing felt like shouting. Diane turned to me. Her face was a museum of disassembly. The confidence was gone. The performance was gone. The emerald green dress that had made her the center of every room she entered now looked like a costume from a play that had closed mid-act. Colette, she said. Her voice was thin, threadbare. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at her, steady, the way I look at a signal before I classify it. Pattern, anomaly, confirmation. You weren't asking questions, Diane. You were digging graves. She flinched. Not from volume, from precision. You spent 10 years making me small. 10 years telling this room, this town, this family that I was a failure, a clerk, a woman who couldn't cut it. I paused. My hand stayed folded, my voice stayed level. But some things grow more powerful the quieter they are. I looked at my father, Gerald Brannigan, 65 years old, owner of Brannigan Motors, a man who signed my academy paperwork without looking up, a man who let his wife rewrite his daughter because rewriting was easier than remembering. You didn't ask, Dad, not once. In 15 years, you never once asked what I actually do. Gerald's eyes were wet. His mouth moved. Nothing came out. The man who had built a business on handshakes and presentations could not produce a single syllable. You don't get to weaponize curiosity and then demand honesty, I said. Not now. I stood. Slowly, the chair slid back without a sound. I smoothed the front of my charcoal dress. I adjusted the matte gray pin on my collar. The recessed lightning bolt caught no light. It never did. That was the point. General Cobb stood with me. Major Miller stepped to my left, not flanking me, honoring me. The geometry of military respect arranged itself around table 12 as if 60 place settings and a chandelier the size of a small car had always been irrelevant. Captain Brannigan, Miller said quietly, the car is outside. I nodded. I walked toward the door, past table 11, past table 10, past table 9, where Tom Harris sat with his mouth open and his napkin clutched in both hands. Past table 6, past table 4. I did not stop at table 1. Diane watched me pass. Her hands were in her lap. Her rings no longer caught the light because her hands were shaking too badly to hold still. Gerald stared at the centerpiece. White roses, baby's breath, a candle that had finally gone out. Even the fire had decided it was done performing. Sarah Miller met me at the door. She didn't speak. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Once, firm. Then she let go. I stepped into the October air. Cool, damp. Pine and silence. The valet had pulled a black sedan to the front. Government plates. Miller opened the rear door. I paused on the threshold between the country club and the night. Behind me, through the glass doors, I could see the ballroom. 60 guests sitting in the wreckage of a narrative that had taken 10 years to build and 90 seconds to dismantle. Diane had not moved from her chair. Gerald had not moved from his. The string quartet had packed their instruments. Not yet. That was what I had told myself all evening. Not yet. Not yet. Now. I got in the car. Miller closed the door. The engine was already running. The weeks that followed were not kind to Diane Brannigan. The counterintelligence investigation into her Ramstein inquiry moved through channels that no luxury event coordinator had ever encountered. Federal agents arrived at the house on Lakemont Drive on a Tuesday morning. Gerald answered the door in his bathrobe. Diane was served a formal notification of a pending security review. Her phone records were subpoenaed. Her email was flagged. The word jurisdiction entered her vocabulary for the first time, and it did not leave. She hired a lawyer, a good one, Thomas Ward. He told her the best outcome was cooperation and silence. Diane was not built for silence. She called 3 of Gerald's friends trying to explain. Each call was logged. Each log extended the review. Gerald canceled the annual Brannigan Motors Christmas party. He told his business partner it was for personal reasons. Tom Harris, who had watched a brigadier general salute a woman his host's wife had called a filing clerk, did not ask follow-up questions. Diane's event coordination business lost 4 clients in 6 weeks, not because anyone published anything, because the room at Oakwood held 60 people, and 60 people hold 600 conversations, and silence, the real kind, is louder than any microphone. The Brannigan family's version of damage control was a letter. Gerald wrote it, 3 paragraphs. He called me our daughter twice and brave once and misunderstood. In the final line, he did not apologize. He reframed, he adjusted the narrative the way Diane adjusted centerpieces, moving flowers to cover the crack in the vase. I read the letter at my desk in the SCIF at Ramstein. Blue light from 6 monitors reflected in my eyes. The hum of servers filled the room like a pulse. I folded the letter once, set it in my desk drawer, closed the drawer. I did not write back, not out of spite, not out of pride, but because I no longer needed to step into a place that asked me to shrink. 3 months after the gala, I established the Sable Scholarship, $150,000, funded from the settlement Diane had once offered me to start fresh somewhere nice. I had never touched the money. I had kept it in a separate account for 4 years, waiting for the right moment to turn her money into something she would never understand. The scholarship supports first-generation women entering military intelligence. No ceremony, no press release, just a letter and a check delivered to a windowless office at Goodfellow Air Force Base, where a young woman who reminds no one of Diane Brannigan will sit down and begin learning to listen to frequencies that don't officially exist. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't ceremony. It was the quietest form of power I knew. General Cobb's son, Danny, called me once. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. 31 seconds. His voice cracked twice. He said, "I don't know if you remember that night. I think about it every day. My girls are 4 and 6. They exist because of you." I listened to it once. Saved it. Never played it again. Some debts aren't meant to be discussed. They're meant to be carried. I work at Ramstein now. Same building, same frequencies, same blue light. No titles on my door. No plaques on my wall. Just Colette. Captain Brannigan to the officers who rotate through. Sable to the ones who were there. The SCIF is quiet at 0300. The servers hum. The screens glow. The signals move through the dark like whispered prayers from places most people will never see on a map. I sit in my chair, headset on, and I listen. That is what I do. I listen to the noise until I find the silence inside it, and then I find the truth inside that. Silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the weight of what people think they know about you, pressed down so hard it squeezes the breath out of your own truth. But truth doesn't need volume, it needs patience. And patience, I have learned, is a frequency all its own. Uh, a new analyst arrived, 23, first generation, nervous hands. She sat down at the console beside mine and adjusted her headset 3 times before the briefing started. Captain Brannigan, she said, I just wanted you to know I'm here because of the Sable Scholarship. I nodded. Welcome to the 450, I said. She smiled, small, uncertain, the smile of someone who doesn't yet know what she's capable of. I turned back to my screen. The blue light settled across my hands. The hum of the servers filled the room. Somewhere in the static, a signal was waiting to be found. I am no longer missing. If you enjoyed this story about quiet competence winning over loud arrogance, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.